everybody. Welcome back to another session with Scott and Nathan. And we are working through the highly over 2 million sold popular book called Emotional Intelligence 2.0.
Yeah.
And we are looking at chapter 5 in this session. And because there are 15 strategies, and these are really the heartbeat of the book, if you understand the premise is that unlike your IQ, which is somewhat inflexible, maybe even rather inflexible, your EQ, the authors argue, is very flexible, and you can develop it, and you develop it through using skills. And so there are 15 strategies that we're going to look at under self-awareness. And self-awareness is just what it says. It's like knowing who I am. In the book on page 61, they say getting to know yourself inside and out is a continuous journey of peeling back the layers of the onion and becoming more and more comfortable with what is in the middle, the true essence of you. And there's a lot of ways to talk about this. I might talk about them in terms of what one's spiritual gifts are. Nathan, you might talk about this, thinking of the Clifton strengths, what one's strengths are, right? Those are all painting a picture of the true essence of you. And so when you take the self-awareness appraisal that you can find on the emotional intelligence website, talentsmarteq.com, then you have a pretty good idea, at least objectively, of where you stand. So with that in mind, why don't we take a quick look at the first 5 self-awareness strategies?
And again, to take note, in chapter 4, it does say pick 3 strategies on one of the things, that competencies that you're working on. So this isn't to say you have to go through 15 here and then the next 10 on the social awareness level. So just want to put that out there before we start going through just the first 5. So,
that's a good point. So you're gonna narrow it down, you're saying, to one of the 4 competencies, and then within the competencies work on 3 of the strategies.
Right. Because they're practices. They're not just an experience one-off. And so it's important to make sure you're building that level of, self-awareness into the practices you have. And we really only learn piece by piece, not all at once, right?
Yep. So number 1, you want to take that one?
Number 1, quit treating your feelings as good or bad. What does this mean? I actually do think there is a great movement about mindfulness, and they even say, don't try and control the emotion first. You just want to observe what's there. So, if anger is there and you're just trying to quell it, be busy, the first step is simply to acknowledge that anger is there. And then the next step is, and just like this one's saying, quit treating your feelings as good or bad. Saying, oh, I have anger. Well, that's bad. I'm just going to stop feeling that. And again, that is not being aware of why the anger is there. And let's face it, I mean, all of the emotions that we have are attributed to God in some way. When it says God was righteous in his anger, it even says that he's a jealous God. So there are right connotations to every single emotion that we have. But we typically treat them in a pecking order or an order of, well, these are shameful or not. And so the first one is simply allowing your emotions to be there without you trying to pronounce judgment over them first.
Yes, I remember once in a counseling session saying to a man struggling with sexual integrity issues, at the very least, before you act out the next time, which seems like I was prescribing it, but it was so compulsive that it was almost assumed it was going to happen again. I said, at the very least, your assignment for the next time is before you act out again, I want you to sit. I can't remember what time I assigned him. Sit for a minute.
Oh, time frame.
Sit for
Okay.
1 minute in silence, and literally go like this if you have to with your hands, and just sit there before you act out, and just feel what's going through your body, through your mind, what you're thinking. Just allow, versus, as Billy talked about on Sunday, hurrying to the next thing, which hurry is the culprit of so many things. Just sit there and feel it for 1 minute. And I think that can be a powerful way to begin to bring self-awareness to.
You prescribed him number one strategy.
Long before I read the book.
It is number one, just number one on the list. But
there you go.
But it's true. We are not adept. We're not that adept as people to sit with our emotions and just recognize why it's happening, what's going on. You know, a lot of acting out has to do with feelings of shame, feeling worthlessness, feeling loneliness, so many things that when you take them to God, I mean, many of them are, right? So
absolutely.
It becomes a different process altogether. So anyway, that was number one, though, right?
Yep.
So what's number two?
Number two is observe the ripple effect from your emotions. And so when I feel what I'm feeling, or when I feel what I'm feeling and I let that come out in almost an uncontrolled, unaware way, what impact does that have on others?
Yes. I mean, it says here in one paragraph, your emotions are powerful weapons. Continuing to think that their effects are instant and minimal will only do you a disservice.
Yeah, and they give the example of the manager who belittles a direct report in front of others.
Right.
And it's really interesting how they paint that picture, because we've probably all experienced something like this.
Right.
The others who are hearing it are also affected.
Oh, absolutely.
And then they go and they basically play it safe because they don't want to get in trouble in many cases. Now, they could rebel themselves, the people hearing the ripple effect, but many times they'll play it safe. And then in this scenario, it's the manager in about a year when all this bubbles up to the surface. He or she, whoever acted out in the first place because they were unaware, they're the ones that end up getting docked, as they say in this illustration, a year later, because they were not aware that their emotions were having a ripple effect on the rest of the team. So who am I impacting?
Right.
Other than myself. So that's the ripple effect number two.
Absolutely. And the ripple effect in terms of time. I mean, it was saying by the end of the paragraph, like a year later, you can still see some effects of emotional outbursts and things. So
that's right. Now the next one reminds me of Brene Brown.
I was just thinking that.
Yeah.
Right. Be present to it. Go into it. I mean, even in the book that we covered, she says you have to go through it, not sweep it under the rug. You can't go around it. The win is through, right?
Lean into your discomfort. And again, these three skills really go together. I mean, if I'm able to sit for a minute, I mean, man, imagine if I could sit for 3 minutes.
Yeah.
Before
The other author that comes to mind is Dr. Thompson. I mean, I think that was our first book too, The Soul of
Yes.
Shame. And
Yes.
and what's so powerful, the picture to me that the impression his books left on me was this visual of being disintegrated or integrated.
Mm.
To me, embodied or disembodied.
Mm.
And so often we are disconnected from the emotion, disembodied from what is truly happening on deeper levels.
That's right.
And that's what they're saying is move toward the emotion. When you notice that the person who's sitting down, maybe the person who might act out on his sexual addiction will sit and feeling your feelings, you'll notice, okay, what I'm really feeling is this deep hurt, right?
Yeah.
And a hurt that may have been, honestly, the number of it could be a childhood memory, it could be a teenage memory, but whatever it was, it stems from something in our story, our narrative. And to be able to move into the hurt gives you the ability to become aware of why you're feeling hurt. What has triggered you to feel that hurtness? Yeah.
Yep, that's right. And they say rather than avoiding a feeling, your goal should be to move toward the emotion, into it, and eventually through it. So that's number 3.
Yeah. That's
lean
number 3.
into your discomfort.
Right. Moving right in then. Feel your emotions physically. Number 4.
Yep.
I think, again, with the embodied versus disembodied, some people stuff, and especially today when you feel like you have to hide your feelings in the workplace, let's face it, on a Sunday morning, maybe, whatever the situation, you feel like you've got to put on the happy face. And it means that you're practicing, your practice is, I'm not going to let my body mirror what emotion I'm really feeling. And it can be scary too, because you might have a lot of pent up years where you did not allow yourself to feel grief, loss, anger, sometimes many emotions at once, because they have had so long stuffing it in the closet, right?
That's right.
So it can feel a little overwhelming and nerve wracking, I think, to let yourself physically feel an emotion. Unfortunately, when we do that, it has the double-edged sort of, that means that we don't feel love when someone is being loving to us. We don't feel joy. I'm bringing up we're bringing up all these books, right? The other half of church that talked about hesed, love, and joy. And that is the goal behind making sure our bodies feel the emotion too. So
yeah, and it is what Kurt Thompson also talks about. Feel what you're feeling.
Yeah.
Which sounds strange. I remember the first time I heard it, I'm like, what? Aren't I already feeling that? Like, but that's the point. We often feel things and are consciously unaware of it. We're not completely unaware of it, but we wouldn't be able to put words to it. And it's almost like there's a filter that I'm using to shield myself fully from what I'm feeling.
It's either the veil, it's denial. We are really good at that skill, unfortunately.
Yes. So for me, they give a great skill about closing your eyes and thinking about where your pain is, and they walk you through this, what to do. Yes. Excellent.
I did that with my daughter when she was having trouble sleeping. That was earlier in her childhood, but just to feel where the emotion is, where the tension is as well. It's kind of a mental and body check at the same time, and it's amazing what comes out. So
it really is. And then when you begin to recognize, like, wow, I really feel this in this part of my stomach or in my gut, in this particular area.
Yeah.
And then in the future, you become more sensitive to it so that when you feel it, you can say, oh, okay, that's a dashboard indicator.
It is. That's a great way of saying it. The dashboard. It's kind of the blinking light. And certain things are tuned in to certain, the body keeps score. That's another book. But, a gut level pain is different than when you say, like your shoulders are tense. There are different emotions for different parts of the body that's going on. And so it's just amazing that though we try and disintegrate for the sake of our own safety and what we feel like is our own comfort levels, it's a really powerful thing when you think of who we are as human beings, body, soul, spirit.
It really is.
So
by the way,
number 5,
oh, go ahead.
No, I know we gotta keep going. So
that's okay. Number 5, know who and what pushes your buttons.
Yeah.
So
I mean, this is which lesson is it? But this one to me directly correlates with spiritual inventory. When even though it's not only about people who are triggering you, of course, but like, why does this person rub you the wrong way? Those kind of things to be aware of, because it could be you.
That's right. Well, I was just going to say, some people in our lives are extra grace required people. And I think of when I walk into the finance office here, I often think, I bet they view me as an EGR kind of person because math is not my strong suit. And but I also like to get things. I like to get things right. So I'm sure I take far more of their time. But they're very gracious, and so that's a great point. Right. Yeah, we need to be aware of who needs extra grace from us. But in humility, we should be aware that there's probably somebody else showing me extra grace today too.
I think it's safe to assume that there's always someone getting extra grace. So these are 5 powerful strategies, and each one alone takes time and practice. And I think that's, having a sponsor, having, what do they call it? EQ mentor, whatever it is, someone
doing the assessment.
Do the assessment. They go a long way with helping us see ourselves in a new light, and it can really change the direction of our lives too.
Absolutely. So if you're listening to this and you say, well, you know what, that's interesting, I'd like to be part of a group that talks more about that. Well, love for you to share our videos. That would be, we're trying to get the word out that we have recovery group here at Christ Community Church. Or if you're listening to this in another state, there are, I'm sure, hundreds of recovery groups near you.
Yeah.
In a given week, probably in a given day. But if you're in the Westchester area, we'd love to have you at Celebrate Recovery on Monday nights at 7:00 here at Christ Community Church in the Hub. Because these are kinds of things that Celebrate Recovery talks about. Like we've been saying, they're very parallel concepts. So that said, thanks for joining us, and we will look at the next 5 in our next video.
All right,
see you guys today. All right, see you guys.